I've been trading for about 7 years, and what we're seeing right now could make you insanely rich if you play your cards right. And the last time we saw this signal, well, then thousands of people made millions of dollars. The thing is, most traders are misinformed and they don't really know what to look for. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what you need to know in order to make a load of money this cycle. So let's get right into the video. What we're looking at here is the Bitcoin dominance, more specifically a daily time frame. Now you might be able to notice that basically since early July, we have been seeing a massive sell-off on the Bitcoin dominance. Now, a lot of traders don't actually know what the Bitcoin dominance means. When it goes up or when it goes down, they don't actually know what it means. So to make sure everybody understands exactly what it means, I'm quickly going to show you a drawn out example. Let's imagine that what I draw here is the Bitcoin dominance chart. Whenever you see the Bitcoin dominance go up, well, then that means that Bitcoin is essentially in control. Now, what's Bitcoin in control of? Well, it's in control when compared to altcoins. So whenever we start to see pullbacks on the Bitcoin dominance, well, then that means that altcoins are now in control. When the Bitcoin dominance then starts to go up again, well, then that obviously means that Bitcoin is back in control. So in short, when the Bitcoin dominance is going down, that's because altcoins are in control. When the Bitcoin dominance is going up, well, then that's because Bitcoin is in control. That also means that the Bitcoin dominance is actually the tool that you should use in order to predict the altcoin season. You might also notice that I've drawn out a trend line, okay? And recently we had a massive breakthrough of this trend line with a proper candle closure below. Now you might sit there and wonder, why am I looking at trend lines? Why am I looking at the stuff which millions of other traders are looking at? And you're not wrong. Normally I'd be in the exact same boat. However, if we take a look at the last very aggressive altcoin season in 2021, we can see that exact same pattern playing out. We have a trend line that was retested once before then broken through that set off an entire altcoin season. Now, if we compare the trend line break of 2021 to the one that we're seeing now in 2025, we can see that they are nearly identical. And so that takes me back to the point which I always make. We are traders. We're not magicians. That's why we have to look at what price has done previously. Does that mean that it necessarily has to happen? No, absolutely not. But when we see the exact same pattern playing out, well, then we can only anticipate to get the exact same result. Now, let's anticipate that this right here is going to play out exactly like it did in 2021. Is a singular trend line on the Bitcoin dominance going to be enough for you to actually risk money on altcoins? No, in my opinion, not at all. And that's exactly why we're going to take a look at some more data. The first thing I want to look at is actually Ethereum, because right now we are seeing a massive power of three, also known as an AMD model, playing out. So this is essentially a three-phase pattern. The first phase is what we call the accumulation phase. Now, the whole idea behind this phase is that the market engineers buy side as well as sell side liquidity. The market can now do one of two things. It can either sweep the highs of that consolidation or it can sweep the lows of that consolidation. Whichever side of the consolidation it decides to sweep first is what we call manipulation, and that is the second phase of the power of three model. The reason why it's called the manipulation phase is because smart money is essentially manipulating retail traders into thinking that right now is a great short opportunity. Vice versa, had it broken out to the upside, we would have classified that as a manipulation move, and that smart money was essentially manipulating retail traders into thinking that right now was a great long opportunity. What the vast majority of retail traders are going to do is see this as a regular consolidation. Now, whenever the market decides to break out to the downside, they are going to see that as a rectangular breakout and a short opportunity. Smart money, of course, knows this, and what they're going to do next is send the market absolutely parabolic to stop out all the traders that shorted that rectangular breakout. That is exactly what we call the distribution phase, which is the last phase of the power of three or AMD model. It is also the phase where we want to look for our entry, because again, that is when the market goes absolutely parabolic. Now, let me show you this exact same pattern playing out in a different market. What we're going to look at is a very famous currency pair known as Euro USD. If you've been trading for a while, but then you have probably heard about this asset before. Millions and millions of people are trading this on a daily basis. Just by having a quick glance at it, we can see the exact same pattern playing out on the exact same time frame as we're currently seeing play out on Ethereum, right? If I do this, you can see a clear comparison. Accumulation, manipulation, and then distribution. The reason why I'm showing you this is because a lot of traders will look at this and immediately think that they're too late to the party. That could not be further from the truth, and EURUSD proves this because it is way ahead of Ethereum. It has already swept the highs of that original consolidation, and if I had to bet money on it, well, then I would think that EURUSD is going a heck of a lot higher than it already has. So that right there is proof enough that Ethereum is indeed going much higher purely based on the power of three model. Now, if you're not convinced yet, let let me show you an asset that you are definitely familiar with. We're going to take a look at Bitcoin. Recently, Bitcoin broke its previous all-time high of 112,000 and made a new one at 123,000. By just taking a quick glance at Bitcoin, nothing seems to be out of the ordinary. However, if I now start drawing out that exact same pattern, we can actually see it play out in perfect form. What we're seeing here is, of course, the accumulation phase, which is the first phase. Down here, we see the manipulation phase. And what we're seeing here is the distribution phase, which sent Bitcoin absolutely parabolic. So a major reason for the Bitcoin rally is the exact same pattern that's currently playing out on Ethereum. So that should be proof enough that yes, the Power of 3 or AMD model does indeed work on a consistent basis. Now, of course, what we've looked at here is basically just technical analysis, and that's not enough on its own. You see, if we pay attention to that original path to altcoin season, well then phase 1 is when Bitcoin starts to surge, okay? Phase 2 is when Ethereum starts to outperform Bitcoin. Now, if we then jump back into Bitcoin, we can see that despite the recent rally, we are now met with a tight consolidation. If we then compare this chart to the Ethereum chart, well then it's completely opposite. Ethereum is going absolutely parabolic. In other words, Ethereum has been outperforming Bitcoin, and I can prove this further by looking at the inflows. You see, what we're seeing right now is the biggest inflow in Ethereum history. Again, we're seeing the biggest inflow in the history of Ethereum. That is massive within itself. And if we pay attention to the quarterly returns of Ethereum and Bitcoin, we can see that Q3 of 2025, Ethereum has printed 43.29%, while Bitcoin has only printed 9.95%. And so that right there is all you need to be able to tell that yes, Ethereum is finally starting to outperform Bitcoin. And so based off of technical analysis alone, that should be enough to tell you that Ethereum is definitely not done rallying. One of the biggest factors when it comes to figuring out exactly when crypto is going to rally is to figure out exactly when people are interested in Bitcoin. Now, I don't mean traders like you and me. No, I mean retail traders, your taxi driver and your neighbor. One way of measuring the interest of these people is simply to look at the interest over time on Google Trends. As you might be able to tell, the interest for Ethereum has recently started to go a bit parabolic. However, what we're seeing now is nothing compared to the altcoin season of 2021. The retail interest for Ethereum at the time went absolutely parabolic. Only this time around, Ethereum is trading at 3,600 while the retail interest is barely there. So this essentially tells us that the wave of retail has not yet entered the market. Because when they do, the Google Trends chart is going to look like this. And can you imagine the price of Ethereum once it does? That right there is one of the biggest signs that yes, Ethereum has the capability of going to at least $10,000 this cycle. And no, I'm not just feeding you with nonsense. I actually believe in the Power of 3 concept. Not only have I showed you examples of this playing out in different markets on different assets, I longed Bitcoin from about 102,000 because I understood exactly how to read the Power of 3. Now, did I randomly long Bitcoin because I saw a Power of 3 model playing out? No, of course not. I combined it with on-chain analysis as well as macroeconomics. Because again, no matter how great a setup looks, when you are investing in a certain asset, you want more than just technical analysis. But the Power of 3 was exactly why I was able to be so accurate with my entry. You see, I always say that fundamentals is great for direction and technical analysis is great for accuracy. And that right there proves my point. I was only able to catch Bitcoin at 102,000 because I understood exactly what to look for when it comes to the market itself. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I promise to return with more content.